He talks that way, the way he did on this tape, it confirmed that he is truly a racist.
As you can see, we are in the campaign season for 2024. It's going to be between Trump and Biden. And as a Black American, you're going to be asked this question if you choose to vote for former President Trump. Why are you voting for him? Don't you know he's a racist?
These are animals.
Look at my African American over here.
When he talks that way, the way he did on this tape, it confirmed that he is truly a racist.
A well-educated Black has a tremendous advantage over a well-educated white. A Black may think that they don't really have the advantage. If I was starting off today, I would love to be a well-educated Black.
Mexico sends its people. They're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. I want surveillance of certain mosques.
Negotiating with China. They say, we want deal.
I'm asking for the vote of every single African American citizen in this country. What do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed.
I'm not a racist. I am the least racist person that I can tell you.
Don't you know he's a misogynist? Don't you know that he's a threat to democracy? Well, this is your video to share with your friends, your neighbors, your family, your church membership, your church family, as to why a Black American would vote for former President Trump. First, when people ask you that question, respectfully say to them, why would a vote for former President Trump as a Black person be looked at with such disdain? Do you think I don't have agency enough to choose and think for myself? But do it with a smile. And then secondly, say to them, the reason why I will vote for former President Trump is because I choose not to vote for a party that has been about the systemic destruction of the Black community since slavery.
The Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely. This effort, however, was dealt a major blow by the Supreme Court in the 1857 case Dred Scott versus Sandford. The court ruled that slaves aren't citizens, they're property. The 7 justices who voted in favor of slavery, all Democrats. The 2 justices who dissented, both Republicans. The slavery question was, of course, ultimately resolved by a bloody civil war. The commander-in-chief during that war was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. 6 days after the Confederate Army surrendered, John Wilkes Booth, a Democrat, assassinated President Lincoln. Lincoln's vice president, a Democrat named Andrew Johnson, assumed the presidency.
Since Reconstruction.
But Johnson adamantly opposed Lincoln's plan to integrate the newly freed slaves into the South's economic and social order. Johnson and the Democratic Party were unified in their opposition to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gave blacks citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave blacks the vote. All 3 passed only because of universal Republican support. During the era of Reconstruction, federal troops stationed in the South helped secure rights for the newly freed slaves. Hundreds of black men were elected to Southern state legislatures as Republicans, and 22 black Republicans served in the U.S. Congress by 1900. The Democrats did not elect a black man to Congress until 1935.
Since Jim Crow.
But after Reconstruction ended, when the federal troops went home, Democrats roared back into power in the South. They quickly reestablished white supremacy across the region with measures like black codes, laws that restricted the ability of blacks to own property and run businesses, and they imposed poll taxes and literacy tests used to subvert black citizens' right to vote. And how was all of this enforced? By terror, much of it instigated by the Ku Klux Klan, founded by a Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest. As historian Eric Foner, himself a Democrat, notes, in effect, the Klan was a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party. President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, shared many views with the Klan. He resegregated many federal agencies and even screened the first movie ever played at the White House, the racist film, The Birth of a Nation, originally entitled The Klansman.
Since the New Deal, since the Great Society, I will not vote for a party that is all about that. And go on to say, I will not vote for a party that has contributed to the deaths of over 20 million Black lives through abortion.
Understand present-day Planned Parenthood, we should understand Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood's founder and hero.
Margaret Sanger was a big proponent of negative eugenics, which was the viewpoint that you should weed out unfit people from the bloodline. So that would be encouraging people not to procreate if they were unfit, feeble-minded, had any kind of mental illness, and that also included forced sterilization.
Words like unfit and feeble-minded were used to describe not only the poor and mentally ill, but also to describe African Americans.
Margaret Sanger stated that birth control is nothing more or less than the facilitation of the process of weeding out the unfit, of preventing the birth of defectives or of those who will become defectives.
In 1921, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League. Its primary mission was to prevent uncontrolled procreation and establish a world program of birth control.
She states, knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. Its general, though prudent practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race. Margaret Sanger stated that the most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it.
In 1939, Sanger wrote a letter to her eugenics colleague, Dr. Clarence Gamble, a member of the Birth Control Federation of America, in regards to setting up the Negro Project, a birth control clinic for African Americans.
She was speaking about serving what she called the Negro population, and in concluding this portion of the letter, she stated that we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
Sanger believed that having an African American minister on staff would ease the suspicion.
African American populations were considered some of these unfit members that should be weeded out. So in this letter, she discusses having African Americans serve other African Americans so they wouldn't be aware that they were seeking to terminate them, to exterminate them by the use of birth control and negative eugenics.
Sanger was quite fond of Dr. Ernst Ruden's work, director for the Society for Racial Hygiene. He would later go on to write Nazi Germany's sterilization laws. In 1933, she published his article, Eugenic Sterilization, An Urgent Need, which promoted programs to eliminate the unfit in order to create a super race. In the late 1930s and 40s, knowledge of Nazi atrocities made words like eugenics and population control unpopular in America. So in 1942, to distance itself in name, Margaret Sanger's American Birth Control League became Planned Parenthood. They weren't just being established in the U.S., it was global. A grim fact in American history was the forced sterilization of women in Puerto Rico. In 1936, sterilization programs spearheaded by the International Planned Parenthood Federation, with funding from the U.S. government, sterilized 1/3 of Puerto Rican women by 1968, making it the highest proportion of childbearing-aged persons sterilized in the world. And today,
Planned Parenthood facilities are generally located in low-income areas, which are heavily populated with minorities. And a lot of times they seek to reach those minorities to help them with reproductive rights, they say, with birth control and largely abortion.
Independent studies have concluded that nearly 80% of Planned Parenthood facilities are set up in minority communities. It's no wonder abortion is the leading cause of death among African Americans, higher than all other causes combined.
That's all about the dismantling of the Black family. That's about the emasculation of Black men that strips away economic opportunity from the Black community, that does nothing for the Black community. that wants to dumb down our children, that does not provide the proper educational opportunity for our children, that does not want to give our families school choice, the option to choose, that has contributed to the rise in crime in our communities and wants to defund the police and do nothing about it, and wants to intentionally use our ethnicity, use black people in their efforts to overthrow this nation in their revolution. I choose to not be a part of that. And then you turn it back on them and say, why are you choosing to vote for Joe Biden? A man that has said this.
A long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
And said this when it comes to the black community.
We do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
So the question for them should be, why aren't you voting for President Trump this year? That should be the question you should turn on them. That's how you handle the question, why are you voting for Trump in 2024?